this week with no teams on a bye. So we will get right into the action here. We have our trusty notebook here, as always. So we will open to a fresh page and get things started. There we go, first try there. So we of course had the 3 Thanksgiving games last week. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday break, whether you celebrate Thanksgiving or not. The first game on Thursday was Bills-Lions. The Bills won 28-25. They won on a pretty impressive final second field goal. Detroit had scored with like 30 seconds left and gave the ball back to Josh Allen with way too much time, and he threw a about 40-yard pass to Stephon Diggs to get him in field goal range, and they made the game-winning field goal. The Bills are now 8-3, and the Lions are 4-7. Josh Allen led the game with 253 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. He also led the game with 78 rushing yards and a touchdown. And Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Lions led the game with 122 receiving yards and a touchdown. The next game was Giants-Cowboys. The Cowboys won this game 28-20. They were down 13-7 and then scored 21 straight points. The Giants scored a touchdown really late in the game, so this game was really 28-13, but another win for the Cowboys puts them at 8-3, and the Giants are now 7-4. All NFC East teams are currently in the playoffs, which is just like what the AFC East was a few weeks ago. Dak Prescott had 261 yards and 2 touchdowns. Ezekiel Elliott led the game with 92 yards and a touchdown. And CeeDee Lamb had 106 receiving yards to lead the game. Next was Patriots-Vikings. The Vikings won 33-26. The Patriots are now 6-5, and the Vikings are now 9-2. There's a pretty controversial no call, or the Patriots tight end Hunter Henry got what looked like a touchdown, and the refs decided it was incomplete. sure about the ruling on that one. No one seems to know what a catch is still, so that was pretty disappointing as a Patriots fan, but good effort on the road versus a very good Vikings team. Mac Jones had 382 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Dalvin Cook led the game in rushing with just 42 yards. And Justin Jefferson led the game with 139 receiving yards and a touchdown. Moving on to Sunday's action, we started with the Bucks vs. Browns. The Browns won this game 23-17 in overtime. The Bucks are now 5-6, and the Browns are 4-7. The Bucks really looked like they were going to win this game. They were up 7 points with seconds on the clock, not much time, and the Browns had a 4th and 10, maybe a 4th and 15 from about the Bucks 20-yard line, and Jacoby Brissett threw a pass to tight end David Njoku in the end zone, and he made a pretty crazy one-handed catch to tie the game and send it to overtime, where the Browns ended up winning. Tom Brady had 246 yards and 2 touchdowns. Nick Chubb led the game with 116 rushing yards and a touchdown. And Chris Godwin had 12 receptions for 110 yards and a touchdown. Next is Bengals Titans. The Bengals won this game 20-16. Both teams are now 7-4. Ryan Tannehill led the game in passing with 291 yards. Samaje Perine led the game with 58 rushing yards and a touchdown. And T. Higgins led the game in receiving with 114 yards and a touchdown on 7 catches. Next was Texans Dolphins. The Dolphins won 30-15. The Dolphins were actually winning at 30-0 at halftime in this one, and just didn't score in the second half. The Texans are now 1-9-1, and the Dolphins are 8-3. Tua Tagovailoa led the game with 299 yards and a touchdown. Jeff Wilson Jr. led the game with 39 rushing yards and a touchdown. And Tyreek Hill led the game with 85 receiving yards. Next was Bears-Jets. The Jets won 31-10. Zach Wilson was benched for this game in favor of Mike White, and White definitely looked like he was ready for the starting job. He played very well in this one, as I will tell you in a second. And Justin Fields for the Bears did not play. Quarterback for the Bears was inactive, so Trevor Siemian started for the Bears. The Bears are now 3-9, and the Jets are 7-4. The aforementioned Mike White led the game in passing with 315 yards and 3 touchdowns. David Montgomery of the Bears led the game with 79 rushing yards. And Garrett Wilson led the game with 95 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Falcons Commanders was next. The Commanders won 19-13. The Falcons are now 5-7, and the Commanders are 7-5. Marcus Mariota led the game with 174 passing yards, and 1 touchdown. Brian Robinson Jr. led the game with 105 rushing yards, and Olamide Zaccheaus led the game with 91 receiving yards. Just looking at that, it looks like he had over half of the Falcons' receiving yards, which is a pretty fun stat, I suppose. Next is Broncos Panthers. The Broncos lost 10-23, and their woes continue for the season. There were some defenders visibly upset with quarterback Russell Wilson during this game, probably for his very poor performance on the season. Some are starting to call it one of the worst trades in NFL history. The Broncos are now 3-8, and the Panthers are 4-8. Sam Darnold led the game with 164 passing yards and a touchdown. Deonta Foreman had 113 rushing yards to lead the game. And DJ Moore had 103 receiving yards and a touchdown to lead the game. Next was Ravens Jaguars. The Jaguars pulled the upset on this one, 28-27. The Ravens are now 7-4, and the Jaguars are 4-7. Baltimore was winning this game pretty late into the game, and Trevor Lawrence led Jacksonville on a nice 2-minute drive to score a touchdown, and rather than going for the extra point to send the game to overtime, they opted to go for the 2-point conversion. They ended up getting the 2-point conversion and thus took the lead and won the game. A pretty big win for the Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence had 321 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Lamar Jackson led the game with 89 rushing yards. And Zay Jones had 11 receptions for 145 receiving yards for the Jaguars. Next was Cardinals Chargers. The Chargers won 25-24, a very similar story to the Jaguars game. Raiders scored late in the game and opted to take the 2-point conversion instead of tying the game with an extra point. And they also completed the 2-point conversion and won the game. They are now 6-5, and the Cardinals are 4-8. Justin Herbert had 274 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. James Conner led the game with 120 rushing yards. And DeAndre Hopkins had 84 receiving yards and a touchdown. Next was Raiders Seahawks. Another close game. This one was 40-34. The Raiders won in overtime. The Raiders are now 4-7, and the Seahawks are 6-5. Geno Smith led the game with 328 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs had a crazy game. He had 33 carries for 229 yards and 2 touchdowns, one of those being a 80-something yard touchdown in overtime to win the game. He surpassed over 300 total yards on the game. DK Metcalf had 90 yards receiving on 11 catches to lead the game. Next was Rams Chiefs. Chiefs won 26-10. The Rams are now 3-8, and the Chiefs are 9-2. Patrick Mahomes led the game with 320 passing yards and a touchdown. Isaiah Pacheco had 69 rushing yards and a touchdown. And Travis Kelce led the game with 57 receiving yards and a touchdown. Next is Saints 49ers. This was a pretty boring game. It ended 13-0. Pretty rare that we get a shutout. Saints are now 4-8, and the 49ers are 7-4. Jimmy Garoppolo had 222 passing yards and a touchdown. Elijah Mitchell led the game with just 35 rushing yards. And Brandon Ayuk led the game with 65 receiving yards. Packers-Eagles was next. Sunday Night Football. The Eagles won 40-33. Pretty high scoring game in this one. The Packers are now 4-8, and the Eagles move to 10-1. Jalen Hurts had 153 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. He also led the game with 157 rushing yards. And Christian Watson led the game with 110 receiving yards and a touchdown. And finally, we have Monday Night Football, Steelers-Colts. The Steelers won 24-17 in this one. the Steelers are now 4-7, and the Colts are 4-7-1. Matt Ryan had 199 passing yards and a touchdown. Jonathan Taylor had 86 yards and a touchdown on the ground. And Jelani Woods led the game with 98 receiving yards. As I mentioned before, no teams were on a bye this week. And that is all for your Week 12 recap. I hope you enjoyed, as always. The Week 13 predictions will be out either tomorrow or Thursday before the games, as always. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.